Hey, this is Chugg, and in this video I would like to explain the importance of correct weapon choice. So while I was planning my tutorial for different guns and how to get better at aiming with them and using them properly, I realized that I really need to explain them in a more basic level, and I have a video prepared which I can use to talk about them a little bit more, so I hope you enjoy that. So when facing an opponent, correct weapon choice is the easiest way to improve your battle skills and your likelihood of survival. When you die, ask yourself if a different weapon choice would have meant you lived, or if you would have fared better. So for example, if I'm trying to do some long range rocket spam and a guy's just, he's on the edge here, he's just LGing me down, or if he's like backed up and peeking and getting the rail off, like maybe rockets are not the right choice here. Maybe just, running away is the correct choice in that situation. But things like that. So if you're a veteran and you know the guns very well, I encourage you to skip to the timestamp I've linked in the description. Well, not linked, but yeah. And then for those of you who are newer, I'd like to explain the guns just a little bit so you get an idea as to when the right situations are to use them. So the first gun, the railgun. This is the easiest to explain. It's a point and click, 80 damage, or 90 damage if you scope in. And it has a really long reload time. And that's the real key strategic thing that decides when it's useful and when it's not. So as far as I can tell, there are three main situations where it's useful. First, long range fights, and your opponent doesn't have a railgun. If you're fighting a guy here and you have rail, he doesn't, that's good for you. Like, he has to hit a direct rocket from here, especially if you come back, because he can't see your feet, you're going to win that. So that's the first situation. Second situation is to use it for exit rails. Now, an exit rail is when you're fighting somebody, let's say here, you're doing some damage with the other guns, and you realize you either want to disengage or your opponent is about to disengage. You get the rail off, and then you get behind cover, and you end the fight. This way, he can't punish your long reload time, and you get the 80 damage off, so you maximize the damage potential that you could put output. The last situation is when your opponent is in kill range for a rail. You have to know, this is important to note, you have to know that they will die, because if you miss, if you're in mid combat here and you switch to rail and you miss, the reload time is really punishing and they can kill you, and you're probably going to die. If you hit the rail and they survive, that's also really bad. You'll see a lot of good players will go to the LG and then they'll switch into rail for the finisher. That's a common finishing tactic, because it is the fastest way to end a life, or to end a fight, I should say. But missing is very punishing, and also misjudging how much damage you have to do to them before they're ready to die is also very important to get right. Okay, so that's the railgun. Next is the rocket launcher. Of course you can use it for rocket jumps, but I'll just talk about fighting potential. Only strong rockets will be able to outdamage the lightning gun at medium range. So if they're positioned in an area like this, they don't have a lot of movement potential, so it's easier to hit the rockets. But if they're out in the open, out here, they've got too much area to evade and dodge, and if they correctly anticipate where you're firing, you've got no chance. The closer that you are, the shorter time that the rocket has to travel, so they don't have as much potential to dodge, and you can get 100 damage with a full rocket, and you can knock them into the air, throws off their crosshair, you can switch to LG and finish. It's just really strong in close range. So if you're in close range, rockets are your friend. One thing to note about, you can also use it for spam and area denial. So let's say you're over here, and you think your opponent, you heard he went through the teleporter near Tribalt, and you want to deny him coming up these stairs, and you're waiting for the pickup. You can spam the choke, or the choke point, about here, and this really deters him, or her, from entering and past this. So you can use it as area denial. One really important thing to note is that when aiming at long range spam, a small difference in the crosshair, so if I'm flicking to this, if I just try to if I try to do inaccurate flicks at the choke point, you'll notice that I actually landed some rockets here. So the person will hear the explosion, come out, and won't be hurt by them. So it's really, you have to be really precise vertically because the difference is very slight. So that's a really key thing to note. You have to be very precise when doing spam rockets. You may think it's just like, oh, aim at the choke, but you have to actually be precise. It's obviously better to go for, as a slightly, simpler note, aim at their feet, aim at the ground beneath them, because if you miss the direct damage, if they dodge to the side, you'll still hurt them with the splash damage, and you'll knock them and sort of control their movement. So you can fire the follow-up rockets and get chain damage off of that sort of CC, that crowd control. So that's the rockets basically. Now we'll go to LG. This is the most reliable, consistent damage in the game, especially at medium range. It'll beat rockets. It'll beat rail. Well, it won't beat rockets if the guy's really super good at predicting your movements and disrupting your movement. But generally, this is just really, really precise and consistent and reliable damage. LG is weak to cover. So if your opponent, let's say you were out here waiting for the pickup, you got the LG out. Your opponent can peek briefly, shoot a rocket, and get back behind cover. Because you can only do damage with LG as long as your opponent can see you. So if he's there shooting you with LG, you can just peek, rocket, peek, rocket. You're only exposed for a small fraction of time, and similar thing you can do with rails. This is actually something I recommend doing for these guns, but I'll go into it more later. So the LG is definitely the most powerful gun at this range, but cover really nullifies its effectiveness. So be careful. Is there anything else for this? Oh yes, when an opponent is going up a jump pad, their movement is very predictable, and so your LG is very easy to land. Similar thing with if they fall off of, defending here is very common. If they fall down, it's very easy to track them and to get 100% damage. Obviously you won't get 100% damage, nor will I, but those who are really good will get 100% damage on them. It's said that Cooler in Quake Live practiced people making the jump from grenade launcher to heavy armor, to red armor at the time, in Quake Live, and would just constantly practice getting 100% damage and juggling them. That's how we got really good at that. So it's a skill that's worth developing, is to really controlling a mouse with the LG. Okay, so that's the very basics of the guns. Now I'd like to go over to a clip of Cypher and Nitrino, which I will help to demonstrate the importance of correct weapon selection. So we'll go over here. Okay, so this is on the YouTube channel Quake Champions Pro. It's got a very clickbait title, as you can see. We're going to watch it in half speed, and it's very blurry. I think this is due to the stream quality that this was taken from. I have it on maximum quality, and yeah. So a couple of things to note. The heavy armor is about to be up at 210. We know this because Cypher picked it up. Nitrino knows the timer for heavy as well, because he died just before it was picked up by Cypher. Cypher then went on and picked up Mega Health at 149, so we know it's at 219. So we'll just watch here. He's obviously, well, okay, we'll watch it first without me saying anything. Just note the weapon selection. Okay, there's the kill. So there's a couple of things to note. So firstly, we'll look at it through Cypher's perspective. So obviously here, he sees him. He's watching to see if he crosses, and he sees him. Unfortunately, he misses the really easy rail. He would have been very disappointed with this. I would say that it's a stage 1 mistake. He expected the scale bearer to be moving faster, so he misinterpreted where he would be. It's not that he failed to flick. Okay, so he knows the scale bearer is heading to heavy armor. let's just note he's got he's Galena and he's got two totems up. He's very healthy. He's got 2 traps here. So any damage he takes, he's happy to retreat and be at full HP at the end of this engagement. He fires a rocket here. This is obviously a mistake. There's no situation where Scalebearer decides to go pick up the rail and go to the teleporter. This is especially bad because that was one of his 3 rockets. You can't really see because the quality is so poor. But he's only got 2 rockets left from now. So he expects. So what's important here is that he's tracking the Scalebearer's position mentally. So he's expecting that since he saw him here, he started to move, and he's expecting him to be about here. So even before he peeks, his plan is to peek, fire a rocket at the choke with the exit, and then retreat. So we'll see him do that here. Now we noticed that Nitrino maybe correctly predicted that a rocket might be coming, so he backed up and he decided to use the LG to try and push him back, because this is a position where the LG can defend against any drops, but it's also a position where the rockets and rail can peek and do damage to him, and the LG can't reciprocate that damage. Cypher decides that LG is the correct gun. Most people would probably fire another rocket. Well, I would probably think to fire another rocket, but Cypher correctly acknowledges that Nitrino extended too far to the right. So now Nitrino was over here just then, and safety, this is actually quite poor quality, just checking. he knows that Nitrino has to go from here to here in order to get to safety, and he believes that the lightning gun is more effective at dealing damage in this particular situation, and he's right. He sees the rail by Nitrino, and because the rail, really long reload time, this gives him the freedom to drop in. He gets the really consistent LG damage because Nitrino jumped, so it was his movement was more predictable, and then finished the kill. So we'll watch it again. Now we'll think about it from Nitrino's perspective. I sort of touched on it there, but we'll think about it a little bit more strongly. Okay, so Nitrino, maybe we can say he correctly anticipates a rocket will come out, so he uses the LG to hold him back. Now, most players will peek again with rockets, so knowing that, Nitrino wants to reciprocate damage with a rail, because he can't really fire a rocket in this position. He could try, hit this ledge, but it's not really reliable. He wants to hit the rail and get to cover. Like, he wants to hit an exit rail here, which is what his plan is. Australian internet. Come on. Okay, he wants to hit an exit rail and get to cover. That's his plan. Cypher happens to use the lightning gun to go for this damage, and that's really punishing for Nitrino, because that allows him to fall because of the weapon choice. If he'd chosen rockets, Galena still would have probably dropped. So we can say that the best decision for Nitrino was to stay with the LG and to just hold Cypher back and secure the heavy armor for himself instead of going for this extra damage. Especially since it's a Galena, he knows that there's a health bubble right up here. Maybe there's a totem. Maybe there's maybe heavy armor, mega health is up. There's no real need to do that damage. The only reason you could say is to try and reduce his armor and force him to go for one of the small armors and help control Cypher's positioning going forward. Now we'll watch it again and really notice something very exceptional. How quickly did he react to that rail? It was insane. It's like frames of, just look, when like green, and he's already moving forward. How insane is that? That is so good. And when I watched this the first time, I thought that was, he just saw the LG was out, and then the instant the rail comes out, he knows to commit and really punish that mistake. So the question to ask yourself is, how do I get that good? That just seems inhumanly good. But what I soon realized when I came back and watched it again, notice something. Okay, so he's getting LG'd, obviously. He wants to push back, or pull back. But then here, they see each other. Nitrino and Cypher both see each other. They still see each other. Still see each other. there's no lightning gun. He's not being shot. Cypher's not being hit. So what I think is that the players at this level recognize when they're not being shot. That means they're switching weapon. It means the opponent is switching weapon. Here, he should have been firing the LG. Nitrino was good enough to react and to flick his LG onto Cypher and be hitting him here, but he's not. And Cypher's using that information to anticipate a weapon switch. So then when it finally comes out, he's probably already committed to dropping before the rail actually comes. So this looks much more impressive just because players like me who would only react to the rail, Cypher is anticipating the switch. And I think that that's really what separates the top level players from the plebs like me. Is to know when the weapon switch is coming and know how to punish it. And it's just really amazing. So I hope that this was helpful, and yeah, see you later.